stop it. All righty. So, first of all, I have to ask and make sure that I get the pronunciation of your name right, because I made that mistake before and it's very embarrassing. So it's Moniak, is that correct?
Moniak, like cognac.
Okay, perfect. All right,
seems
good.
the way that people can remember it.
Yeah, that's the way to do it, exactly. And people can remember cognac. So, I guess the first thing I want to do is, your job title is a job title that I haven't heard someone have before. So can you just sort of explain to me how you feel, like what exactly your expertise entails?
Well, my subject matter is fearless leadership.
Right.
How that is delivered can be via consulting, training, speaking. So it depends on the venue. Sometimes back in the good old days, to be able to speak to an audience about how fearless leadership might affect their industry or their endeavors could lead to training on that, could lead to consulting on that. The flip side is when it's an organization that already knows that fear is rampant. And let me just say, I didn't create the statistic. Everyone I've ever talked to in business says fear is the number one obstacle in business to achieving goals, to ultimate success. And yet we don't talk about it. Socially, culturally, we somehow decided that the only thing we want to do with fear is suppress it, deny it, conquer it, overcome it. All these things which are physically impossible, but that's what we've been doing.
Yeah.
You actually stand up and say, I'm afraid. Oh, you're weak. You're a sissy. You're a wimp. You're a,
right.
It's like, wow. So we don't admit it because we're going to get attacked if we do. And yet everybody's walking around with all these internal fears.
Yeah.
So in an organization, they might know, yeah, we've got fears, running under the surface here. Then I could be working with the executive team, which could lead to trainings, which could lead to speaking and addressing the entire organization. So whichever door it comes in, it's still me talking about the same things, helping people have a different relationship with fear, which starts with an understanding that fear is a law of human physics, just like gravity is a law of planetary physics. We can't deny gravity, so we've given up arguing about it. It exists. We're all subject to it. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Now we can talk about, well, how does gravity impact wherever we're at or whatever we're doing? Okay, it starts to make more sense. If we look at fear in the same way, it is a force that is giving us information, then all of a sudden, being afraid of fear or shying away from fear makes no sense.
Mm-hmm.
If someone said, oh, the gravity here is stronger than where you're used to, oh, so that means it's going to be harder to walk and it's going to be harder to lift things. Oh, I can understand. Oh, gravity is going to be less. Oh, I'm going to tend to float. Right. It's the same thing with fear. But in order to get to that point, we have to face it. So that's step one in my formula or process is facing the fear to determine, is it a real fear or is it a manufactured, imagined, projected fear? If it's a real fear, then we should thank it. We should wrap our arms around it and say, thank you for saving my butt, because one step further, it could have been game over.
Right.
That's not something we should feel bad about. That's something we should celebrate. We have this thing called fear to protect us. If I get a weird vibe from someone, that's fear telling me there's something going on here that you might want to know more about. If we determine, well, no, there is no real, imminent physical fear here, I'm projecting it. Oh, yeah, I'm kind of afraid to talk to you. I'm kind of afraid to ask you out on a date. I'm kind of afraid to ask you for the sale. I'm kind of afraid to go to my supervisor and tell him what I need to tell him.
Right.
Those are projected fears. And so now we go to a different category of information, because what the fear is telling us is that I either lack the mindset or the skill set to accomplish what's in front of me successfully. Again, that's great information. If I told you, Christine, what you're trying to do right now may not work the way you hope it will, but if you were to get a little more educated or develop a little bit better skill, you could nail this.
Mm.
That's nothing to get weird about. It's like, wow, thanks for the heads up.
Yeah.
Now I
Yeah.
got something to work on. So that's the world of facing fear, real or imagined. Which one is it? So now I know what to do.
Yeah.
Once we've determined that, now we can go to the embracing phase of accepting the information that's being given us. Either it saved our butt or it's telling us, well, now that I know I need to change my mindset or I need to develop a better skill set. Speaking in public. A lot of people say it's the number one fear.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true, but I know it's certainly up there.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what is that fear telling me? I know what I want to say. I think it would benefit the audience, but this fear is telling me I haven't developed the right mindset to address an audience.
Yeah. Or even like you say, the skill set, right? I mean,
Or the skill set, how to be on a stage or platform in front of people. Well, those are things that I can learn.
Yeah.
There's programs, there's Toastmasters, there's the National Speakers Association. There's things out there, resources that, oh, now that I've got a different mindset, oh, all of a sudden it feels different. Oh, now that I've developed some better skills, oh, it feels different. Well, wait a minute. You know, 5 months ago, 5 years ago, you were paralyzed with fear, and now you're walking out on stage with a smile on your face.
Right.
What happened? Changed my mindset, changed my skill set. Well, now we can get to the third phase, which is befriending fear, using that energy to our benefit rather than running away from it. And the people, whether it's in business leadership, whether it's in sports, athletics, special forces, medical teams, legal teams, all of these people have befriended a certain amount of fear to be able to do what they do.
Yeah.
So there's demonstrations out there of people who, when, you know, they're ready to operate on someone, there's something inside of them goes, yeah, I got this. This is what I do.
Yeah.
Rather than, oh, I hope this comes out okay. I wouldn't want that guy or gal operating on me.
That's for sure.
So,
Well, so Barry, a couple of things that you said. First of all, relating it to gravity, I think is an excellent example because it really helps you to visualize the fact that, you know, it's an evolutionary skill that we have, right? Fear is something that we've evolved into, and it's a good thing. Like you say, it helps to keep us safe. And relating it to gravity, something that we can't fight, that we can't eliminate, that we can work with it. We say, oh yeah, this is a tool. It's teaching me something.
right.
And I really like the way you use the speaking example, because so take an example, you know, so you've got 10, 20, 100 people who are all afraid of public speaking. You know, 3 of them say, gee, you know, I have this fear, and I'm not going to just avoid public speaking. I'm going to get the skills. I realize that this is a lack of skill and a lack of mindset. So I'm going to go out and I'm going to join Toastmasters and spend my time and energy learning to be a better speaker. That person's outcome compared to somebody who's just saying, oh, you know, I don't want to admit that I'm afraid of speaking in public, so I'm just never going to do it.
Right.
And
Exactly.
yeah. So I know that your focus, and intelligently so, is working with people's fear in the workplace. But I want to talk a little bit, if you don't mind, about fear sort of in our lives, the fear that keeps us from doing things like changing jobs, things like, and right now, I mean, we have COVID and people are afraid to like go to the grocery store. So
Right. Right. No, you're absolutely right, Christine. This applies to all situations. Just a little background on me. I started many years ago doing what I called psychospiritual counseling. I had done building, general contracting for decades, and I was used to reading blueprints. And somehow that had become ingrained in my mindset that if you want me to build something, you got to show me the plans. When I went into business consulting, I was still looking for the plans. When I started working with individuals, I was looking for the blueprint. Well, who are you? Not so much the soap opera of where you've been and what you've done and what you've, who are you? Because we're all wired in certain ways, and there's certain things that are a given, and then there's certain things that maybe are more malleable or changeable. I don't care if we had $1 billion, I can't make you 1 inch taller or 1 inch shorter. So we can take that one off the table. It's a given. Your genetics, DNA has already determined that's what it is. I can make you a pound heavier or a pound lighter, an inch wider or an inch narrower. Oh, so those are areas where maybe we could accomplish something. And then to take that right into the way different people are wired. How many people would tell me, well, this is what I wanted to do with my life, and this is where I am, and that's what's bothering me, and I'm looking at it from a more objective vantage point going, well, what you're doing is leading you to where you want to be, if you wanted to look at it that way. Well, I hate my job. Okay, I can understand that. It may be a less than optimal environment, but what if we flip the script? You're literally being paid to study someone's business environment, that if you pay attention and take notes, you could do something different, better, once you have the opportunity. So you could go to work every day going, thank you for this opportunity to make me smarter, more adept, wiser, so that I can eventually do what I want to do. And now that's not going to feel as begrudging. Well, I was getting a certain amount of traction with people, and then I realized that people's greatest pain, number one pain, was relationship. And so I ended up spending about a decade doing relationship counseling, couples counseling. And what I came to is that what they wanted was for me to tell them who was right and who was wrong. I'm like, no, not my deal, not interested. But what I am seeing here is that one or both of you don't have a good understanding of who you are and how you show up. And you certainly don't have very much training on how to communicate effectively with one another. So that's the part I'm going to focus on. Do you understand why you show up the way you do in certain scenarios? And do you understand why your partner does? And can you start having intelligent conversations about that? At that point, you two can decide whether this relationship is worth keeping or not. I have no idea. Relationships are a lot of work, not for the faint of heart.
that's for sure.
While I'm doing relationship counseling, I realize the number one pain point for couples was money. The abundance of, or the lack thereof, seemed to provide almost identical results. We don't have enough money to do what I want to do, and it's your fault. Or we've got more money than we need, and you want to remodel the house. How? You want to drive what kind of car? We're going where for dinner or on a vacation? And all of a sudden, these lifestyle things would tear people apart. And I'm like, this is just amazing. And over the duration of all these, this went on for some decades, I started noticing that when I was with someone or I was with a couple, that we were getting some traction. And then they would come back a week or two later, and I'd felt myself doing a lot of this. What you should have ought have done was, and I went, I don't want to do that. That's not me. And yet, what am I really saying to myself if I'm not attached to the hip, at the hip with people, that I can't help them? And it's like, well, kind of, sort of, because there's a period of conditioning that needs to happen for people to really embody change. Right about then, my partner at the time invited me to a workshop, a Saturday workshop at her company, a very progressive company. And this guy was playing with everybody about mindset and behaviors and this and that. And I thought he was rather condescending, had no idea how ready, willing, and able this group of people were to play. And the light bulb started to go off that it's like, well, if I went into a business and introduced one simple idea that there was a collective agreement, that co-agreement, we're all going to play with this. We're going to say this to one another. We're going to treat one another in this way, just as an experiment. They're going to reinforce that with each other 40, 50, 60, 80 hours a week. That's where the conditioning can come in. And I had it in my head, if I work with someone, there's the likelihood they'll want to share that in their relationship. If I work with a relationship, they're going to want to take that to work. And I went, well, wait a minute. What if I flip my own script? What if I work with people in an environment where they're going to do the conditioning work? They're automatically going to take it back to their relationship, their family. And I'm like, okay, so I still believe it starts with the person, evolves to a relationship. It's just the environment, the laboratory to get the work done was so much more conducive in a business environment.
Yeah.
So I'm still the spiritual guy wanting to help people, reach a higher state of consciousness.
Now you're just trying to sneak up on them.
Doing it in business.
Yeah. Well, people don't have their guards up so much in business, right? I mean, I think, or maybe in a different way. When you're in a relationship, like you say, it's so easy just to blame the other person. But if you learn something at work and bring it home little by little, it's not so threatening, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, my boss or superior, or we had this workshop or something, and they introduced this idea, and I tried it, and all of a sudden it's different. A little thing, you approach me, hey Barry, and it's like my mindset is, I can help you. What is it you need? I can help you. I can help you with that. To just that one simple thing changes the way we interact with people. It's so simple, and yet a profound outcome.
Definitely.
Yes. I got in the habit of answering my phone. Yes, this is Barry.
Mm-hmm.
And people go, whoa, what? I don't know. The yes threw me off. It got my attention. Good.
Yeah. But how about irrational fears? Like people have fear of success. Like this is this vague thing. I mean, can you educate yourself out of that? I mean, those kind of things are just so abstract.
We can call it irrational, but again, if we've determined, okay, it's not a physical fear, I'm not in imminent danger, but let's start breaking down. It's kind of like the old SWOT, strengths and weaknesses assessment. Okay, you're making $50,000 a year, and your reality around you is what it is. All of a sudden, you're making $100,000 a year. Things are going to change. You're going to feel different about yourself. Your partner's going to feel different. Your kids might feel different. Your extended family might feel different. Friends are going to feel different. Some of your friends, because for you to go from 50 to 100, you had to change some things about your mindset, your skill set, your lifestyle. Well, not everybody that was with you at the 50 grand a year level is going to come with you. So are you ready to loosen the ties to some of those relationships? Are you willing to establish some new relationships? Are you willing to let family and friends go through whatever they have to go through to decide, do they still want to be in your family or have you as a friend? There's things you can be working on that at first is like, whoa, that's overwhelming. Well, how bad do you want it? Well, what if all of a sudden you're making $1 million a year? Hey, Christine, we're friends and could you help me out with this, that, and the other thing? You've got the money, so it's not that you could say, sorry, I couldn't afford that. You want 40, 50 grand to do something, and you're going, I could give them that money and never think twice about it, but why am I hesitating? Well, because now you're living in a more value-oriented reality. Well, what are you going to do with that money? And how do you plan on paying it back? Am I just giving this to you like charity? What are we doing here? And how do I feel about any of those arrangements?
Yeah. And
That's
there's,
part of the reality of being more successful.
right, people taking advantage. You don't know if people like you for yourself, right? If you have nothing, all your friends are for real.
Yeah.
But they could be losers too. Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely true. And I think that's why it's so important as you evolve, right? Your 5 closest people, whoever says that,
Mhm.
people you surround yourself with, they have to be on par with you, because otherwise you're not going to feel comfortable with that success.
That's a really good one, Christine, because people have asked me, well, I've heard that from so many thought leaders and well-minded people. And they look around and go, the 5 people I'm closest to are going to keep my feet anchored to this spot forever.
Yes.
And it's like, well, if we're looking at it in an absolute way, yes. What I look at is some of my 5 people are thought leaders that I don't talk to on a regular basis. I don't hang out with. There was one, ran into him at a convention, and we had met before, but I'd read his books and his blog, and I walked up to him and I said, this feels a little bit odd. Well, what do you mean? I said, I feel like we're really good friends because I hang out with your mind a lot, and yet you and I have never really physically talked much. And he just laughed and he goes, you'd be surprised how often I get that, but that's really cool. So that's one of my 5 people. Anybody in any situation could tap into better thought resources
Right.
to raise their game. But again, what's going to happen to the people around me? Are they going to try to keep me stuck to where I am? Because that's what would make them feel better. Misery loves company.
Right.
If you're part of my network and you seeing me want to get healthier and happier and wealthier is pushing your buttons, then yeah, you're going to instinctively try to stop me. And you're going to think you're doing it out of love. I just don't want you to fail. I don't want bad things to happen to you. Well, why would you think bad things are going to happen to me if I'm raising my status in life? Well, how does one equate to the other? Oh, maybe you're one of the people I'm going to have to loosen that tether, or come back to you and go, Christine, if you want some help from me, you could be doing some version of this too. So please don't try to hold me back or tie me down, because I would much rather us help each other raise up. I firmly believe that most human beings have not been afforded the intimate support that we need to grow and evolve and become what we're capable of being. We give a lot of, lip service. Oh, I wish you the best. Hey, if there's anything I can do for you, but am I really willing to say, hey, Christine, I've got some feedback for you. You may or may not like it, but it would help you on the course that you're going. Not going where I want you to go, but if that's where you're headed, I can see some things from this objective vantage point that maybe you're not looking at. Most people don't have those kinds of conversations.
Exactly. We all need that, because it's very hard to see yourself as your new person, right? You've got this idea, I want to become this person, but you really don't know everything that you need to know to get there, obviously, or you'd be there already. So someone
We haven't
else,
been there, so how could we know?
exactly, and someone
Oh,
looking at
in
it
a
from
foreign
another
country
side.
that we've never visited. I have
Exactly.
no idea what it's going to be like to be there until I get there.
Right. So someone who's been there, or at least has seen the map ahead of time, could just make all the difference for someone. But you're right, people don't want, because it's fear, right, that we don't want to hear that feedback. We don't want to be told we're not already perfect.
or that there's some things we might have to learn and do, develop, enhance to get there. Yeah, it's interesting when you see someone who's received an award, you know, some lifetime accomplishment or something, how often they'll say, you know, while they've got their Oscar or Emmy or whatever, I want to thank so-and-so because they're the ones who believed in me. They were the ones who put their arm around me and said, you can do this. How many times we've heard some version of that. And I go, people, are we paying attention to that? Because that's the formula. Are we really helping one another to rise to a higher, you know, elevation? Or are we hell-bent on trying to keep everybody down so that it makes me feel better?
Exactly. So we've kind of, I want to say, like, peripherally brought up things that I see a lot in Think and Grow Rich, you know, the Bible of
Yeah.
the
Yes.
genesis of the whole movement of people trying to better themselves. I think, and, you know, the mastermind group, you know, and they don't all have to be alive. They don't all have to be people who you know personally, but just by inviting their thoughts into your mind, you know, you can grow. So I want to ask you, I mean, first of all, you nodded your head. Is that a book that you kind of have read and enjoy? And
I forget how many times I've read it or how many times I've referred to it. There was, you know, a small arsenal of books at that time that were all pointing at a similar phenomena, and they're just as accurate today as they were 50, 100 years ago. How to win friends and
influence
what's the
people.
name?
Yeah, how to
Yeah,
win friends and influence people. Yeah.
and influence people. I mean, that's right there with Think and Grow Rich. And
Yeah.
yes, 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 yes.
And it's funny, you read these things now and they seem like, oh yeah, that's all, you know, common sense, whatever, but only because it's been so ingrained into our, you know, conversation, into our vocabulary. It's funny. So would you share, would you be comfortable sharing what your definite purpose in life, what you feel is your definite purpose?
Yeah, I feel on some abstract metaphysical level that I chose to be here to help expedite the evolution of the human condition. At first, that started off as kind of a religious concept, and then it morphed into more of a spiritual, metaphysical concept. And I think nowadays it's just a human concept that we've become entrenched in the way we've gone about doing things. Well, it's the way we've always done it. So, well, there's certain things that you know, truth, honesty, integrity, commitment, those things I don't think have changed in thousands of years. There's other things that have, and are we paying attention to the things, just like I can't make you taller or shorter, but I could make you, you know, wider or narrower. What are the things that we actually can do to make things better? I'm elated that so many people, because 20, 30, 40 years ago, it didn't seem like consciousness. I was even told point blank by marketing people, you cannot use verbiage like that. That's going to scare people away. If you're in business, you don't talk about consciousness and blah, blah. Now it's like, if you don't use the word, it's like, well, are you not paying attention? You know, consciousness, mindfulness, rightfulness, these are common terms. That's the good news. The weird news is when I see how many human beings, in my mind, still have their heads up their butts, that they're not looking at reality realistically, honestly, and how the percentage of our population that wants to manipulate and control other people's lives rather than just enhancing their own. I don't get it. Whether you're, you know, a Democrat or Republican, who cares? Are we addressing the issues of our community and our loved ones? Those conversations almost seem like they're a waste of time and energy, that we've lost track of what's really important. all these people trying to control other people's relationships, who can and can't be together, and who do you sleep with, and who this and who that, and this idea that, you know, well, men are just stronger and smarter than women. We've been operating under that meme for thousands of years, but there's no physical evidence that it was ever true. It's kind of like we thought the world was flat. And oh, yeah, oops, I guess it's not. But it took us, even after they had scientific proof that the earth was round, it took 300 to 400 years for humanity to go, okay, it's round. And from what I hear, there's still people who are questioning that. It's like, have you not seen images from space?
I know, you need to get out of the house a little more, maybe do a little flying,
you
something.
know, the whole gender thing, why is a man's compensation worth more than a woman's? It's like, it never made sense, and yet we're still arguing about it.
Yeah.
Why people think that white people are smarter than black people or brown people. It's like, there's no evidence to any of these things, and we're wasting just so much time and energy and resources on fighting and hating one another. And it's like, you guys, it's irrelevant.
Right.
Can we move forward and actually start doing something that makes sense?
It's good that you know, that the conversation with fear and racism, you know, I actually did a nice, what I think was a nice series about racism with some folks, you know, had a nice panel discussion about racism. And the more that awareness that I have of it, the more I'm seeing, you know, now when I watch films and, you know, listen to different types of media with that lens and trying to understand how that's been, you know, how Black people have been villainized and been really portrayed in this certain way, that ties into fear. You know, it's the fear of the unknown. And really, I feel like we have to, in order for that fear to remain, the segregation has to remain, because once you start to talk to Black people and get to know Black people, you're just like, well, I don't understand why you're so normal. You know, like, why aren't you this crazy person who's running around killing people in the middle of the night or whatever? And fear is a distraction, right? I feel like politicians and the media, they use that fear to distract us from other things. And I hate to say that I feel like a lot of COVID is about distraction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, rather than addressing the real issue, because there are some real issues, we're going off on all these tangents. And now we've got politicians, we've got media personalities, and corporate executives giving advice on something that they have no idea what they're talking about. And I'm like, really, people?
Yeah, I mean, the head of the CDC is saying, yeah, we don't really know much about this virus, but luckily the politicians and, like you say, the media people, they know all about it. No problem.
And yet when you look at people, countries that have gotten a better handle, they went, okay, we don't know about all these things, but we do know that wearing a mask and keeping a safe distance lowers the incidence. So that's something we can do. Okay, people working from home, that's something that was possible for decades now, but corporate America was really resistant to that because we want everybody inside our box so we can control them. Okay, well, I understand that, but now that there's this worldwide epidemic, you're finding out that not only can you still keep the ship afloat, but it's more effective. And I really feel bad for a lot of these huge office buildings that may never be used for what they were built to be used for.
Yeah.
Because, well, no, we can accomplish it at home. I've got a home-based office. For me to have the same square footage in a building is going to cost me 2 to 3 times the amount for rent, 2 to 3 times for the phone, for the electric, for insurance. It's like, and what is it going to provide for me for what I do? Nothing.
Right. And that's the way I feel. You know, yes, I can pay more money to have this office space, but not only is it going to cost me more and I have to drive there and drive back and have all that, you know, starting my day in traffic, but I can't like jump off and do laundry for 5 minutes, you know, in the middle of my day. It's like less efficient.
Exactly. So I think people are having to come to a realization, well, what are the things, again, I can't cure COVID. Can't make it an inch taller or shorter.
Right.
I can play a safer, smarter game.
Yeah.
So when people are talking about, their civil liberties being violated, and it's like, you're being asked to wear a mask to protect me. And now you're telling me that my protection invades your civil liberties? Really? How bad is it to put on a mask and go shopping or do whatever we got to do? It's just not that big of a deal. And yet people are running around with their hair on fire. And the
Yeah.
accusations, oh, it's a liberal democratic plot. They created it.
I know.
They're not even smart enough to get reelected, but they can create COVID. Really? Come on, people.
I know.
But I do think now that we're seeing this start to play out, I've been of the mind, this gets a little bit esoteric, but I've been of the mind that humanity has been in need of a wake-up call for quite some time. That we've the train left the tracks, we've gotten out of hand on some things, and I'm like, okay, how do you rein in humanity? I mean, that's a pretty big boat to turn. And here comes COVID. Oh, it doesn't matter, your size, your shape, your race, your gender, how much money's in your pocket, who your dad, nothing matters. I'm like, COVID overnight has created a level playing field. Wow, interesting. And it's exposing a lot of governmental activity and their mindset, because something that started way back, you can probably appreciate, back when the Beatles, went to Russia, back in the USSR. And I'm like, okay, in my neighborhood at that time, people were tearing down garages, digging a hole, putting in a bomb shelter, and putting the garage back in case the Russians invaded us. And the Beatles are saying, no, these people are really cool. Well, I'm of Russian descent, so it always bothered me that the Russians are the enemy, and yet they're where I came from. And I'm looking at it going, everywhere that I've traveled, and I've talked to people who've traveled way more extensively than me, they said the people from every country they've been to were wonderful people. The governments of all those countries, oh, that's now a different conversation. So maybe this is going to expose that government doesn't always represent the wishes, the intent, the well-being, the health of its people. And now with the internet and social media, we can reach out to people all over the place to find out what's really going on.
Yeah, that's true. And it's like, I think probably a little threatening for governments to have us, being able to have that access.
Uh-oh, now they know what we're doing behind the curtain. Remember the Wizard of Oz, don't pay attention. Yeah, don't pay attention.
Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. So you brought up a point that I wanted to discuss anyway. It's interesting how we just evolved to there, but people using fear to manipulate. In the workplace, this certainly happens. And in the government, I mean, all over the place. In relationships, I mean, how can you help, how can people sort of recognize that they're being manipulated and step back and deal with it and not be taken in by it?
Fear is the number one go-to tool for manipulation. So whether it's governmental, whether it's religious, whether it's academic, the fear of something is what can get people to move left or right, stop, where they're headed. And so the more we can understand that it is a tool being used against us. Like him or not, our president is not the smartest business person, is not the smartest politician, but he knew how to wield fear amongst people that would respond to his message. And they did. And people should be paying attention to that, because what is it why were they so afraid? Oh, because they've been ignored or disavowed or. So to realize that these bigger systems are manipulating and controlling us to various degrees, and sometimes with the best of intentions. I don't think, religion wants to control people for some ill, nefarious reason, but they may not be helping people to become critical thinkers. How do we stand on our own 2 feet and decide things for ourselves rather than buying into a belief system? Well, this is what the Democrats or the Republicans or the Jews or the Christians, this is what they say, and I'm one of them, so that's my statement. We got to get away from that. People have to stand on their own 2 feet and go, well, what do you say?
Right. And why is this person telling me this?
Associated with any of those, camps, but what do you say?
Right.
Well, this is the part I like, and this is the part I'm not so sure of. When
Yeah.
someone talks to me like that, it's like, okay, they're further along the path. They're
Yeah.
starting to figure a few things out.
Yeah. Well, I know there always has to be, if you want to unite people, right, you have to give them a common enemy. And there's a lot of that in, I mean, certainly Hitler's Germany, right? They had to, it didn't have to be the Jews, right, that got villainized, but it had to be somebody. And you might as well pick the people that are this, that have the lowest numbers,
They were the perfect resource for his agenda, because his agenda was that the white supremacist race was the chosen race.
Right.
And then here comes Judaism saying, oh no, for 5,000 some years, it's already documented that we're the chosen people. And he's like, I got to get rid of that.
Yeah.
That's going to mess up with my marketing plan.
Right. And when you look back and you see how he went about that, I mean, I've seen some of the propaganda, like, this is how you recognize a Jewish person. Like, because if you can't recognize them, right, that's no good. That's why Black people and people who wear various, particular costumes for their religious reasons or whatever, that's why they're such perfect scapegoats, is because it's easy to recognize that enemy. Once a person, if I have to say to you, if I have to ask you 10 questions to find out if you're the bad guy, what good is that? I have to be able to spot you from, a mile away on the street. So it's very tempting when you have a problem, right, that you're trying to, when you have a specific problem, like unemployment was one of the problems that I think in Germany, right, a lot of people weren't working. There were economic problems. There was all this leftover drama from World War I, and then we need a scapegoat. Oh, here's one. This is how this is how you know that that's the person, and they're taking your jobs and they're taking your money and they're the bad guy. And as you say, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Right. Well, to answer your question, I think the number one thing people can do is become better educated. And usually when people hear that, they think of going to school. In the years I've been on planet Earth, I think academia has gotten better in some aspects. I wouldn't rely on a formal education to call someone educated. I think there's more power, more benefit in self-education and cross-referencing, because that's the part that school doesn't do. It doesn't develop critical thinkers. It develops thinkers along a certain body of existing knowledge. And that's where we get into trouble, because we don't know how to compare one against the other. The problem with critical thinking is when you start seeing things for the way they really are, it's not always a pretty picture. And it's not always something you can do something about. But I would rather know than not know, and then be, in that body of water that's just getting pushed around, going, why doesn't this feel good? It's like, because you don't know what's going on.
Right, exactly.
When you, in the process of self-education, you start finding out that the Democratic platform and the Republican platform have crisscrossed so many times in a couple hundred years that it's like, well, what you're saying now is what they used to say and what they're saying. So it's like, really, people, are we not paying attention to that? Little things like David Duke and the emergence of the John Birch Society and the Ku Klux Klan, they were all about white power. And then you get people like Angela Davis, who started the Black movement and the Black Panthers, and they're like, okay, we can use that, Black power. Now you're in a fight. You're both using the same symbology. David Duke is the one who coined the phrase, make America great again. And it's like, do people understand that? Nope, they don't want to hear that. It's okay. Now with the current recent events, you know, Black Lives Matter, and I absolutely concur, the way Black people have been treated is horrendous. But now if someone says, well, all lives matter, oh, you're a racist because you're not supporting Black Lives Matter. Well, what about all those other issues that we talked about? We'll solve the Black Lives Matter issue, but the rest of them, well, you can figure that out later. And how Black is Black enough to matter?
That's the thing, because this black-white construct is just so random.
Well, how many people, the Trevor Noahs, okay, he's half Black, but he's Black enough.
Yeah.
Well, now, what if he marries a white woman and they have a kid? Okay, is that kid Black enough? And at what point can you not say, I'm born into a Jewish heritage? Well, supposedly 5,000 years ago, my people were all dark-skinned, what we would call today Black. Well, am I Black enough? No, because look at you, you're white. Okay. You know, we're just not willing to answer some of these questions. I'm talking to an associate who's really smart when it comes to finance and economics on larger levels. And we were talking about the Black Lives Matter movement. She says, well, has anybody followed the money trail? And I'm like, what do you mean? Well, they're raising a significant amount of money. Yeah, well, they're also giving money to, what is it, the BDS movement, who is anti-Semitic. And I'm like, okay, I've got some issues with Judaism, but I don't want to support a group that thinks that killing Jews is still a good idea.
Yeah.
So now it's like, I'm conflicted. And it's like, well, am I going to say this? Here in Salt Lake City, I'm a member of the Black Chamber of Commerce. I had to say that to the leaders of the Black Chamber. Excuse me, but your symbology and your phraseology and the money is causing me a problem.
Yeah.
And are you willing to address any of this? Do you want to be on the side of accurate, authentic information dissemination, or do you just want to take advantage of the surge that Black people are going to get a lot of things they've been fighting for hundreds of years, and now's the time to get it?
Yeah. It's always the money trail, you know. That's what makes it tough, you know what I mean, for people who don't want to be cynical all the time. But like, well,
yeah, and then, oh, you're just cynical. Perfect word. It's like,
yeah.
Am I being cynical because I'm looking at the reality of how things are? I equate that to being a critical thinker. I'm not thinking badly or poorly of anybody or any situation until I get enough information. And I stand on more of a philosophical, you know, platform rather than an intellectual one, because I find intellectuals are willing to argue and fight to prove they're right. Philosophers want to know, well, why do you think differently? Well, what does it look like from the other side of the situation? Because if I cross paths with better quality information than whatever I'm holding near and dear right now, I enjoy the right to change my mind. So you can't hold me to anything I said yesterday or before, because it may have evolved. Haven't you changed your mind about anything lately? I mean, come on.
Right. But that's it, you know, I mean, but what you're saying is you're demonstrating your fearlessness. You're demonstrating the fact that you have got over this fear that everybody has to like me, and if they don't, then I'm a loser or whatever, you know. And that's,
oh, that's a tough one, Christine. That is a tough one. Because yes, I'm a very sensitive human being. Of course, I want people to like me. I want people to feel comfortable with me. And yet that's not always part of my job description if my job is to disseminate honest, accurate information, to help people wake up to the reality of what they're choosing not to look at or process. And it's like, okay. And that's where I go back to, well, you know, where's the shoulder I can lay my head on? Well, it's, you know, reading one of the books that always makes me feel good because they're in a similar position to me. They deal with this kind of stuff every day. It's like, okay, maybe it's only in my mind, but it makes me feel more comfortable. There are people who do get me and do appreciate me. And you know what? You only need a small handful of those people. I'm okay. I'll be all right.
Well, it's interesting because I forget now who said it. I was looking at some research and they said people who are going to basically become successful entrepreneurs have always felt like they didn't fit in. And I think it's because of that critical thinking, because we're not willing to just like, you know, mindlessly follow, you know, the current trend. But it's a compliment to you.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. There was a book, I think it was the same author as Think and Grow Rich, that wasn't released for like 50 years or something. It was something, Conversations with the Devil or something like that. And it was almost like a two-person play where this person had cornered the devil and the devil had to answer all the questions honestly. And what was exposed is that all those things we named, you know, whether it's religion, academia, corporate structure, have conditioned people to not think for themselves, which makes them a prime candidate for the dark forces to swoop in. That as soon as a person stands on their own 2 feet and asks the question, well, what do I think? That devil energy can't get a hold of them. And I went, what an amazing story. And his wife was the one who said, you can't publish the book as long as you're alive because they'll destroy you. They've got you on a pedestal and they'll take you down. And then he died and they said, well, now can we publish it? No, not until she died. So it was like, I think 7-8 years ago or something, she had passed and they were finally able to put the book out. And it's like, yeah, it exposed, just in the course of a little simple story, it exposed a lot.
Interesting. I'll have to look that up. So that and everything else, all the other stuff that we talk about, it's going to be on the website, getyourfillpodcast.com. Barry, I love talking to you, I have to say.
Likewise. This has been a pleasure.
Thanks.
I feel like we've known each other for eons.
I know it. It's true. What should I have asked you that I failed to ask? What do you want to share that I didn't touch on?
We covered so much. I'm always willing to have conversations with people who want to move a situation forward, whether it's, you know, themselves, relationships, their business, because having the privilege of an objective vantage point on other people's situation, I can see things and ways of approaching things that maybe they can't. And that's what lights me up is, you know, you asked me, why am I here? To help facilitate people moving forward. If people don't want to move forward, I lose interest and I'm out. The first time I fired a client was a huge awakening. They were willing to keep paying me money, but we were not going anywhere, not accomplishing anything. Yeah. And I went, I can't do this, and you're tarnishing my reputation. And no, I need to be around people who want to move forward. That engages me. I don't care, I have to get my hands dirty and deal with difficult, challenging situations. That lights me up much more than going around the track doing nothing.
Exactly. It's amazing how people think that writing that check is progress. It's like, yeah, no, you actually have to do the work. Hello.
Well, what we didn't cover is I've been a certified ski instructor for 22 years now,
Oh, interesting.
and the immediacy of what happens up on the mountain when someone starts to feel fear, because it is real.
Yeah.
And the mountain and gravity, if they have their way with you, it can be terminal. So there's a good reason to be afraid, and yet people project more fear sometimes than what it really is. Again, if they develop the right mindset and the right skill set, all of a sudden what once scared the life out of them is now one of the most enjoyable, exhilarating experiences they can have. It was that immediacy, and that's where the whole face, embrace, and befriend came from. That if people would realize that it can be simpler than what we're making it, if we just start breaking it down to more, what do they say? You can't eat an elephant
Yeah, right. One bite at a time.
one bite at a time. Okay. It's the same thing. What are the things that I can do to start making progress? Because if you're immobilized, that is the worst state of fear to be in, because it is happening, it's happening to you, and there's not a damn thing you can do about it.
Yeah.
As soon as you take a step and start moving, now it's not the fear that's allowing you to move. That's your own energy. That's your own personal power.
Right.
Now you've got something to say, okay, where am I really at? What am I really up against? And it's the people who have embraced and endorsed that as their lifestyle, their way of being. That's where the befriending fear comes in. Oh yeah, I get afraid of things. And every time I do, here's the process I go through to create some movement rather than taking another lap around the track.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, you talking about, you're relating the fear to this, being on the slopes and stuff, but the reason that people are able to succeed when they're up there is because they're listening to you, they're taking your advice, and they kind of have to, right?
Yes.
They're not going to get down the mountain if they don't listen to you. So it must be just that little bit easier to get. Don't you wish you could bring all your clients up to the top of the mountain and say, listen to me?
Someone like me, yes, it's immediate gratification, because in a couple, 2-3 hours, I will change someone's reality.
Yeah.
In a really big way.
Yeah.
Like, wow, I can't believe where I was 2-3 hours ago and where I'm at now. And then I go into business and go, if we could do that, oh, wouldn't that be nice? But the way people are dressed and the way they show up in the offices and the cars and this and that, they've got this facade that, oh, everything's good. If I was able to pluck them up and put them on the mountain and they start shaking, it's like, oh, now how good is it? Because there are fears in business. Leaders experience it every day. Managers, salespeople, customers, it's prevalent in business, and yet we don't talk about it. And if we did, and if we quit belittling other people for saying I'm afraid, if you were one of my managers and you said, Barry, I know this is what I'm supposed to be doing, and I'm experiencing some fear. I put the wrong person in this job. Let's get rid of her and let's get somebody else in here.
Yep.
Rather than, well, sit down and let's talk it through. Yeah. Is it real or is it imagined? Okay, now we know that. Okay, if it's imagined, what do we need? Oh, maybe you need some more training.
Exactly.
Maybe, hey, can I recommend a book that might change the way you think? Can we meet on a semi-regular basis and just throw some ideas around that might change your perspective and mindset on what you're doing? And all of a sudden, you're moving up because I was willing to invest a little bit of time and energy to help you evolve.
Absolutely.
But
and
leaders
it's the
don't
evolution.
want to do that. Oh, that's like, treating people like my kids, I'm like, well, your kids don't work for you 40, 60, 80 hours a week. There's no pressure on them to perform. You're not going to fire your kid. And so you're saying you can't use a little bit of the relationship dynamics that you give to people that you love and care about to people who work their ass off for you? Really? That's too much?
Right? It's just uncomfortable for people, but hopefully with your help, we're all going to evolve beyond that eventually.
That's the goal. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people that are singing this song. It's not just me.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can help one another. We can do better.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Thank you so much for being here. I really enjoyed our
My
conversation so
pleasure.
much. And I feel like we've somewhat solved the fear thing. We've somewhat solved like how to, I was going to say, well, what's the cure? And right, it's analysis. It's taking a step back, right? I mean, I think that's what I heard you say is just to say, before we like say, I'm not afraid, I'm fine, everything's great, just stop and say, oh, I've had that funny feeling. I think I'm a little uncomfortable here. Let's figure out why I feel that way. And then do some critical thinking, do some analysis, and then figure out how to move.
If someone makes that internal statement, I'm not afraid, fear get thee behind me, that denial is putting them in serious danger because they're not addressing, they're not acknowledging what the fear is trying to tell them.
This evolutionary gift that we have, right? This instinctive gift that we have of fear.
If I put you on terrain on the mountain that's above your pay grade and you get afraid and you start doing some, oh no, I got this, you could end up in serious trouble.
Exactly.
But if you look at it and go, okay, this is scaring me, so I need to figure out the mindset. Why did this feel comfortable and this doesn't? And the skill set, do I understand the difference of how I have to navigate my turns on this level or on this level? Oh, okay, now I know what to practice. And then all of a sudden you're going, wow, this used to scare the bejesus out of me and now it doesn't anymore.
Yeah, perfect, beautiful. Thank you very, very much. All right, I'm going to stop the recording if I can find the button, if I can find my cursor.